Have you ever found yourself playing RimWorld and thinking, just 10 more minutes, but when you look at the clock, hours have passed? What if I told you that there are several other games that follow the same vein, each with its own twist, but all capable of completely sucking up your free time? So settle in, because if you love RimWorld, these games will steal your attention and maybe even your sleep. I'm Matthew, and we're starting the list with Surviving Mars, a city-building and survival simulation game developed by Hemomont Games. The central premise is to establish a self-sufficient human colony on Mars. Unlike RimWorld, the initial focus is not on the colonists, but on the robotic infrastructure. The player starts with autonomous drones to build the basic structure of the colony, such as solar panels, water extractors, and oxygen producers, even before the first human team lands on the Red Planet. The gameplay delves into resource management on a macro scale. The electrical grid, life support system, and material logistics are the pillars of survival. The colonists, once they arrive, have specializations, traits, and needs, but managing them is less direct than in RimWorld. The player assigns them to workplaces inside pressurized domes, and their satisfaction is measured by statistics such as comfort, health, and sanity. Failure to manage these complex systems can lead to a cascade of problems, resulting in the collapse of the colony. Banished is a medieval village-building simulator with an intense and singular focus on survival. Developed by a single programmer, the game puts the player in control of a group of exiles who need to build a new home in the wilderness. The main antagonist is not an external enemy, such as pirates or aliens, but nature itself. The cold, hunger, and depletion of resources. There is no combat or complex technological research. The core of the gameplay revolves around population management and work allocation. Each citizen is a valuable resource. They are born, grow, work, form families, and eventually die. The player does not control them directly, but assigns professions such as farmer, lumberjack, blacksmith, or builder. The challenge is to balance the production of food, firewood, tools, and clothing to survive the harsh winters, which are the ultimate test of the village's efficiency. Poor management can lead to a spiral of death by starvation or freezing. The main distinction of Banished in relation to other games in the genre is its purist and punitive approach. The game does not offer a technology tree to make life easier in the long term. The tools and methods remain the same. The only way to progress is through territorial expansion and population growth, which in itself generates new logistical challenges. This mechanical simplicity hides a brutal strategic complexity where a single wrong decision can doom the entire village. Frostpunk 2 expands on the premise of its predecessor, placing the player 30 years after the Great Frost of the first game. Humanity has survived the Coal Age and is now entering the Oil Age. The challenge is no longer just physical survival against the apocalyptic cold, but the survival of a growing society. The scope of the game shifts from managing a city to managing an entire metropolis, introducing new layers of social and political complexity. The fundamental gameplay is still based on resource extraction, heat management, and city expansion. However, the new district system allows for a more granular organization of the metropolis, where each district can have its own purpose. The main mechanical addition is a deepened political system. Different factions with conflicting ideologies emerge in the city, and the player must navigate these tensions, passing laws in a council and trying to keep society cohesive. The big difference in Frostpunk 2 is its focus on scale and internal conflict. While RimWorld generates drama through the interactions of a small group, Frostpunk 2 generates drama from the ideological tensions of a massive population. The decisions are not just about what is most efficient to survive, but also about which vision of the future should we follow, which will inevitably displease a portion of the population. Political management and social consequences. For the RimWorld fan, Frostpunk 2 offers an intense dose of decision-making with moral and strategic consequences. The constant pressure and difficult choices that define the fate of its inhabitants are a direct parallel. The shift in focus from the micro, individuals, to the macro, society and factions, represents the main variation. Dwarf Fortress is, in many respects, the direct precursor to games like RimWorld. It is a colony and management simulator with a depth of simulation that remains, for the most part, unmatched. The player takes control of a group of dwarves with the goal of building a fortress in a procedurally generated world. This world is not just a map. It is generated with a history of centuries, civilizations, wars, myths, and legendary figures even before the player starts the game. The gameplay is notoriously complex. Each dwarf has a detailed personality, with skills, preferences, beliefs, relationships, and life history. The physical world is simulated with impressive precision, including geology, hydrology, and temperature. The player must dig the fortress, manage the production of food and goods, create defenses, and deal with the psychological needs of their dwarves. Failure often occurs not due to lack of resources, but due to a tantrum spiral, where unhappiness spreads and leads the fortress to collapse. The main feature that distinguishes Dwarf Fortress is its uncompromising depth and the generation of emergent narratives. The stories that arise are not scripted, but are the natural result of the interaction between the game's complex systems. A cat vomiting in a tavern can start a fight that escalates into a civil war. A relic created by an artisan may have the image of an event that actually happened in the history of that world. The complexity is both its greatest strength and its greatest barrier. Oxygen Not Included, developed by Clay Entertainment, is a space colony survival simulator that stands out for its simulation of physical systems. The player manages a group of colonists called duplicants, who find themselves trapped inside an asteroid. The goal is to build a sustainable base, managing not only the basic needs of the duplicants, but also the complex systems of gases, liquids, temperature, and electricity. The gameplay is a continuous exercise in engineering and problem solving. Each duplicant has positive and negative traits that affect their performance. The player's task is to dig out the asteroid, build accommodations, research and production stations, and create interconnected systems to generate oxygen, clean water, manage waste, and produce food. Failure to manage carbon dioxide, excessive heat, or germ contamination can lead to the slow and methodical end of the colony. The striking differential of oxygen not included is its thermodynamic and fluid simulation. Each block on the map has properties of temperature, pressure, and gaseous or liquid composition. Building a cooling system is not just a matter of placing an air conditioner. It requires the use of pipes to circulate a coolant that absorbs heat from one area and dissipates it in another. This physics-based approach applies to almost every aspect of the game, making it an ever-evolving engineering puzzle. Factorio is a management and construction game focused almost entirely on automation. The player takes on the role of an engineer who has crashed on an alien planet and must build a factory from scratch to eventually launch a rocket into space and escape. To achieve this goal, it is necessary to mine resources, research technologies, and automate production on an ever-increasing scale. The gameplay cycle of Factorio is addictive and methodical. It starts simply mining coal and iron ore manually. Soon, the player builds automatic miners, furnaces, and conveyor belts to automate this process. The complexity grows exponentially as new technologies are unlocked, requiring the creation of complex assembly lines to produce increasingly advanced items, such as electronic circuits, construction robots, and finally, the rocket parts. What sets Factorio apart is its singular dedication to the concept of automation and logistical optimization. There is no focus on the individual needs of a character. The player is a singular entity of control. The main challenge is to design and build an efficient factory, managing the flow of thousands of items on belts, trains, and ducts. The map is virtually infinite, allowing the construction of megabases that are true marvels of virtual engineering. Combat exists, with the local fauna attacking the factory due to pollution, but it mainly serves as an incentive to automate defenses. Timberborn is a city-building game with a unique premise. Humanity has become extinct, and a society of evolved beavers now seeks to thrive. The game focuses on resource management, especially water and vertical construction to make the most of limited space. The beavers are the protagonists, and their affinity for wood and water engineering defines the entire gameplay. The mechanical core revolves around the cycle of dry and wet seasons. During the wet season, the rivers flow, the crops grow, and water is abundant. During the dry season, the rivers dry up, the vegetation dies, and the colony needs to survive on the resources it has stored. This forces the player to think about water engineering, building dams, dikes, and canals to retain water and keep the land fertile for as long as possible. The main feature of Timberborn is its emphasis on terrain manipulation and verticality. Being beavers, The colonists are excellent builders, and the game allows you to stack buildings on top of each other, creating dense and vertical cities with platforms and stairs. A RimWorld player will appreciate the struggle for survival against an unrelenting environmental cycle, similar to preparing for winter or a heat wave. Managing the needs of the beavers, food, water, well-being, will also be familiar. Timberborn offers a more optimistic and creatively focused approach to construction compared to the often dark tone of RimWorld. The focus on water engineering and vertical construction provides a distinct and interesting set of strategic challenges. Empires of the Undergrowth is a game that combines base building with real-time strategy, all from the perspective of an ant colony. The player manages the construction of the underground anthill, the collection of resources, and the command of ant armies in battles on the surface against other colonies and predators such as spiders and praying mantises. The gameplay is divided into two main areas. Underground, the player digs tunnels and builds chambers for different purposes, such as nurseries to create new ants, food storage areas, and spaces for evolutions. On the surface, the game turns into an RTS. The player controls groups of ants to collect food, explore the territory, and fight enemies. The resources collected on the surface are used to expand the nest and strengthen the army. What makes Empires of the Undergrowth unique is its theme and the fusion of genres. The presentation is done in a style reminiscent of a nature documentary, with narration explaining the behavior of the ants and other insects. This scientific and educational approach adds a layer of immersion that is not common in strategy games. The gameplay is also guided by missions that simulate the real challenges of an ant colony, such as surviving seasons or defeating a rival colony. From a technical point of view, the game features realistic 3D graphics that portray the world of insects in great detail. The models and animations of the different creatures are well executed. The artificial intelligence of the swarms, both allies and enemies, is a key point, with the ants moving and fighting in large groups in a cohesive manner. The interface manages to balance the management of the underground base with the control of the units on the surface effectively. For a RimWorld fan, the appeal lies in building a functional base and defending it against external threats. The need to manage different castes of ants for specific tasks echoes the management of colonists with different skills.
The colony is starving. The ants have an opportunity to explore for food, but there are other dangers at night. The ants must fight.
The queen is exhibiting interesting new behaviors. I believe the colony is beginning to adapt. Eat hearty, grow strong. The work will continue soon.
Kingdoms and Castles is a city-building game with a more accessible and visually charming approach. Inspired by classics of the genre, the game places the player in the task of developing a small medieval village into a prosperous and well-defended kingdom. The main challenge is to balance economic growth with the need to build fortifications to protect citizens from threats such as Vikings and dragons. The gameplay is centered on a grid system, which makes planning and building the city an intuitive task. The player needs to allocate land for agriculture, extraction of resources such as wood and stone, and construction of housing. The happiness of citizens is an important factor, influenced by access to taverns, churches, and the tax burden. The castle building system is modular, allowing you to create walls, towers, and gates creatively to optimize defense. What sets kingdoms and castles apart is its simplicity and focus. It does not have the same depth of personality simulation as RimWorld or the logistical complexity of Factorio. Instead, it offers a clear and satisfying game cycle. Build, prosper, defend, expand. The threat of dragons, which can set buildings on fire, and Vikings, who attack citizens, creates a constant tension that directs construction priorities to the defensive aspect. Technically, the game uses a low-poly art style that is clean, colorful, and aesthetically pleasing. This visual simplicity also ensures that the game performs well on a wide variety of systems. The simulation of fire spread, the AI of the enemies, and the calculation of the population's happiness are the main technical systems in operation, but they are presented in a direct and easy-to-understand way through the user interface. For a RimWorld player looking for a more relaxing and less punitive experience, Kingdoms and Castles is an excellent option. The Wandering Village is a city-building simulator with a highly original premise. Civilization is not built on solid ground, but on the back of a colossal wandering creature called Onbu. In a post-apocalyptic world covered in toxic spores, the survival of your population depends on the symbiotic relationship they establish with the giant that is their home and their transport. The main gameplay involves building a village on Onbu's back, managing resources, agriculture, and the needs of the inhabitants. However, there is an additional strategic layer, the management of the creature itself. The player needs to build structures that interact with Onbu, such as feeding stations to keep it nourished or command posts to try to influence its path through the world map. The player's actions can strengthen or harm the creature's health and trust. The element that defines the Wandering Village is this duality in management. The player must make decisions that balance the well-being of the village with the well-being of Onbu. Extracting resources from the creature's back can provide valuable materials, but it can also hurt it. Forcing it to march through dangerous deserts may be necessary to find an oasis, but exhaustion can be fatal for it. This symbiotic relationship creates a unique set of moral and strategic dilemmas. Technically, the game combines detailed 2D art for the buildings and characters with an impressive 3D animation for the Onbu creature. The contrast between the small village and the monumental scale of the creature in motion is one of the visual highlights. The interface needs to communicate both the status of the village and the state of health and mood of Onbu. The procedural generation of the world map with different biomes that affect both the village and the creature adds replayability to the experience. For a RimWorld fan, the Wandering Village offers a new perspective on survival in a hostile environment.